So, Katie, how do you overcome OCD?
So I think the first thing is arm yourself with loads of knowledge. Just read up about OCD and understand how the problem works. And then when you've done that, the next thing is about really getting on board with the idea that the solution that you've created to try and help yourself with these thoughts, images, urges, sensations that you don't like is actually creating the problem rather than getting rid of the problem. So it's a bit harsh when you go for treatment, you go, you know all that stuff that you did a really great job of doing?
Can't do it.
Yeah, all that's the problem now.
But how do you override that? Because I'm imagining if it was, say, OCD around safety and you've left the house and you're imagining that you've left the hob on, to tell someone to not go back and check it, that takes a huge amount of willpower to override that compulsion. How do you do that?
Yeah, and that's the thing. The idea of like, oh, just don't check, it doesn't really work, because if it did, then it's not like people haven't tried to not check. So the treatment process, part of the treatment process, revolves around something called ERP, exposure and response prevention, where you get people to kind of put their fears in a sort of hierarchy with the stuff that's not so scary at the bottom and the really scary stuff at the top. And then you slowly work through that. So in terms of someone with a checking thing, you do things where, for example, you get people to deliberately leave something on and then walk away and come back later. And you get people to recognise that they can tolerate the discomfort of that feeling. Because this is what, in a way, a lot of it is about not being able to tolerate the feeling that you get. So it's like, oh, if I just check it, then this will go away. Of course, then every time you check it and then the feeling comes back, you've got to check again. So what we're trying to teach people is that if you don't do any of those things to make yourself comfortable, when your anxiety level goes up or your discomfort level goes up, that if you don't do something to bring it back down, over time, it is actually going to come down on its own.
Yeah.
But that takes quite a lot of practice.
So you have to, I guess, get used to just riding out that discomfort without anything, without any coping mechanism. Just do nothing.
Yeah. So that's where the kind of hierarchy comes in, because obviously, if you start with something that you're super scared of and you just say, just do nothing, it's not going to happen. So you're going to start gradually so that people can recognise that, okay, this does actually work. Like if I do something I don't want to do, but I know that I probably could too, but I don't feel super comfortable, but I'll do that and I'll do it differently. Then they learn, oh, okay, yeah, I did manage to deal with that anxiety and that discomfort and it did go away after time. So one of the questions we'll often ask people, when people are like, I can't stop myself, or I can't stop thinking about it, or I'll just say, have you ever had a time where, I don't know, the phone's rung or the doorbell's gone? What do you do? And they'll say, well, I go and open it. And I'll say, and then what happens to what you were thinking or what you're doing? And then often they'll say, oh, I've forgotten about it because I'm busy doing something else. So that's one of the things one of the parts of treatment is about understanding that idea that the more you pay attention to something, the worse it's going to feel, the bigger it's going to feel, the more important it's going to feel. And actually, when you learn to leave something alone, actually it's going to take care of itself. So it's a bit like, if you imagine, when did you last blink?
I'm hoping about 10 seconds ago, but I don't know.
You don't know, okay. So if you concentrate now thinking about your blinking, how does it feel?
Very laboured and awkward and strange.
That's right.
So, and I'm also really concentrating on you blinking a lot.
Now I'm going to start concentrating on it as well. So when we pay attention to something that should just be a natural automatic process, so thoughts popping into our head are an automatic process, or like blinking or breathing, these things, they just happen, and thoughts are the same, they just happen. But in OCD, what happens is people interrupt that process by thinking about it, going, oh, well, why have I had that thought? Or am I blinking? Or they start what I always call just getting involved where they're not needed. Yeah. So as you just saw, just that tiny little thing when I said that,
as soon as you start,
can't stop. Hopefully it's going to go away, Fearne. So it's part of it is we've got to train people to retrain their attention so that they're not always paying attention to the things that they don't like.
Is that a matter of distracting yourself, or is that just another habit to get into?
That's a really good question. So there's a sort of, it depends what you mean by distraction. So usually we would call distraction something that you do to try and kind of get away from the thoughts or push them away or somehow get rid of them. So we would say, no, that's not helpful, because the idea is that you're not trying to push anything away. The idea is that you're letting it be there. What I say to people is like, fine, if you've got like thoughts or feelings, just let them be there. They can like have a party in your head for all we care. And then you're going to pay attention to something else. So it's really all about your intention. I mean, a distraction or redirecting your attention, they could in theory be the same thing. It could just be semantics, but it's about what's your intention. Okay, I can show you an exercise so you can understand what happens when you try and push your thoughts away.
Okay.
I've never done it like this before, so you have to bear with me. I usually use a door. Okay, but you're gonna use my hand.
I don't have a door,
Okay.
I'm so sorry.
No, exactly.
Like, what am I
so
doing?
use my hand, okay. So imagine my hand's a door,
Right.
okay? And imagine that this side of the door is something that you really don't like and you find really scary, so you want to try and push it away.
Yeah, I've got something 100%.
Okay, so you're just going to push it away, and then I'm going to give you instructions. So push it away so it can't get in, okay? All right. Are you pushing hard? Because you do not want the bad stuff to come through, okay? All right, now I want you to ignore my hand. Are you ignoring my hand?
I don't know.
How easy is it to ignore my hand right now?
Impossible.
Right, there you go. So interestingly, Fearne, what most people do when you say ignore the door is they take their hand off. You did very well because you didn't take your hand off.
No, I was trying to imagine
But
it
then
wasn't
you
there
were-
and push
but
harder.
Because you were pushing, you couldn't ignore it,
No.
right? So that's what happens with thoughts or feelings. If you try and push them away, you're like more in contact with them.
Yeah.
So it's what you said earlier about what you resist persists. You know,
Yes.
the more you try and get rid of it, the more you're in contact with it.
And I think what happens, and this is just speaking personally, if I've got something I don't want to think about and I keep landing on it, I then often pile self-loathing on top of that and go, oh God, I'm a terrible person because I can't stop thinking about that thing I don't want to think about. And then you're in an awful spiral of compulsion, but also that self-loathing, which is awful.
Yeah, because what you're doing is you're somehow telling yourself that you should be able to control whether it pops up into your mind. But we can't control what pops up into our mind. Like, none of us can. And that's the thing.
So important for people to hear, because I think
important.
people who either deal with intrusive thoughts, and I had a period of intrusive thoughts when I was going through a depressive episode, and it came out of the blue. I didn't know what it was, and I felt like I was deeply flawed for having these intrusive thoughts. And I would look around at everybody near me and think, oh God, they're all so controlled and level-headed. But the fact that you've just said that we all have them, I think is deeply liberating.
Yeah. It's so important, and it's at the very core of helping yourself to get better, because whilst you consider that those thoughts are like peculiar to you or weird or odd or you somehow shouldn't have them, then you're going to keep trying to push them away or get rid of them or avoid them, right? But when you realise, okay, it's just normal stuff. So like you said, okay, if you have something that keeps coming in your mind and then you're like, the trick is you've got to think of it like, you get a song stuck in your head, like, the wheels on the bus, right? That's it. That's all it is. It's just an annoying song stuck in your head. You don't want it there, but you don't have to get rid of it. You just have to think, okay, that's just that, and I'm going to get on with my other stuff.
Yeah, I love that. And that's very important for people to hear, because it is a lonely place, I think, if you're having those thoughts and you feel like you've got no control over them. None of us do.
No, but that's the point. None of us have control over what pops up into our head.
We're complicated humans with strange brains, and that's a fact.
Yeah. Scientifically proven.
It really is, by me. Katie, thank you so much. That has been so helpful, and I've learned a hell of a lot about OCD, so thank you so much.
Thanks, Fearne.